if this became law, $1 billion more in debt. And yet, in so many ways, we didn't address the critical issues for middle-class families. My colleague, Senator Breslin, just highlighted some of the issues and the impact specifically for upstate New York. This bill has lots of detail that was not discussed today because, again, we got the summarized version of the resolution at 10:30 this morning. And then we learned there were some changes after that, and that's okay. We're allowed to make mistakes, and we're allowed to fix the mistakes. But again, a $133 billion budget, a resolution that makes significant changes to every part of that budget, $1 billion more expenditures than revenue as the proposal. This wasn't enough time. This wasn't enough thought put into it. We learned it doesn't address UB 2020, and many of my Republican colleagues have said they're not doing a budget that doesn't address UB 2020. It doesn't address property tax relief or mandate relief for the localities that so many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle have been so eloquent about. We're not dealing with the STAR program or the rebate check issues or property tax relief. Even though I'm not a big fan of caps, we're not even dealing with the tax cap. Mr. President?
Senator Krueger, may I have order in the chamber, please, so we may hear the senator? Senator Krueger, you may continue.
Thank you so much. Obviously, we're all good people who want to do the right thing for the state of New York, but I'm afraid that this document is filled with empty promises and, in fact, broken promises. Now, we did have plenty of time, apparently, in this document to undo some major policy concerns. My colleague, Senator Espaillat, was very eloquent when he talked about that nothing to do with rent regulation was in this bill, despite the fact that it has an almost immediate impact on whether 2.5 million New Yorkers can continue to afford their homes. But we did have time in this bill to revisit LIFO issues for the teachers of New York City and apparently violate collective bargaining agreements in the context of a budget resolution. I'm very confused why we're revisiting that today. It did have room to delay low sulfur diesel laws that we passed, which has the #1 cause of air pollution in urban areas, in my own district, in fact. It did have language to attempt to deconstruct the authority of DEC in ensuring that the bottle bill we passed in the state is implemented correctly and, in fact, may put in a further hole in the state budget if we don't have the authority to track and collect the nickels from the bottles that are supposed to be reimbursed to us in the state. But this language, Part DD, in this bill would actually gut the authority of the Office of Tax and Finance to do the job they need to get us this money. It got an additional amount of money from the Department of Environmental Conservation. It got, as my colleague Senator Diaz described so eloquently, some of the most critical human service and social service programs for people with special needs who live throughout the state of New York. This is not what we believe should be the budget of the state of New York. We still have a few weeks left to negotiate a more serious budget for the state. I'm assuming we will have conference committees announced soon, and I'm assuming we'll get another chance to reevaluate what's in here and what's not in here before we complete the budget for the state of New York. But in closing, we want a fair budget. We want a budget where we share the pain. We want a budget where those in the least need provide assistance to those in most need. We want a responsible government who recognizes our responsibility to all New Yorkers by region, by district, by recognition of the role of government to provide assistance and services efficiently and fairly to all 19 million New Yorkers. So there's too much missing There's too much unexplained. There's too many broken promises. I'm recommending a no vote for my colleagues today. I will be voting no. Thank you, Mr. President.